birds and bees, they don't fuck. Welcome to Birds and Bees Don't Fuck, a podcast where we learn exactly how bad our formative sex education, or lack thereof, really was. I'm your host, Arielle Zadok. I'm a sex educator, intimacy coordinator, and a whole lot of other things. My guest today is a kinky consultant, sex worker, and performance artist in Los Angeles, California. Welcome to the show, Sam! Welcome. Ooh, we're starting with a whistle. Yes, we love to see it. I'm so happy to have you on here.
Thank you for having me. I love talking about sex.
Me
When I met you, I was
too.
like, finally, somebody.
Somebody who wants to talk about sex with me.
Thank God.
I love meeting people that want to talk about sex because it's all I talk about all the time.
I feel like that. I'm like that friend where everyone's like, I don't know, ask Sam. And I'm like, you guys want to talk about it?
Yeah. Let's do it. We can jam on that. Yeah. I feel like every conversation with me somehow gets veered into sex and relationships. I don't mean for it to. It's just what my world is.
I do mean for it too. Like
Yeah.
I'm always pressing the borders of like sussing out a new friend group to be like, okay, who's gonna? Because in a group of like 10, there's always one person. And so I'm like, I'm going to pull this out of you.
Come hither.
While 9 people stand around uncomfortable.
We love the discomfort. We love the discomfort. And you are actually my first sexuality worker or somebody who's working in the sex space on the podcast. So
Yeah.
I'm so happy that it's you also because we're friends.
Yay.
So it's fun.
So fun.
Yeah. And we're new friends, which is really fun too.
Mhm.
And I remember I saw you on Instagram and I was like, oh, Kinky consultant. Yeah. I want to follow them. This is great. Loved what you were doing. Loved what you were putting out there. And then you had your open house of the Pink Playground, I think it's called. Yeah.
Yeah, the Pink Playground.
Yeah, Pink Playground. And then I walked in and it was so beautiful.
Thank you.
And Auntie's was there. Auntie's Coffee was
Absolutely.
there.
I
and
love Suni.
Oh my
Wonderful
God.
person.
Suni is great and also my neighbor.
Really?
Yes.
Oh my God, I'm stopping by.
Yeah, they literally live at the end of the street. So we should for sure actually text them after this.
What are you doing?
What are you doing right now? Because we out here. Yeah, the street is kind of magical like that. There were like a lot of weird things. But that's how it was walking in your space. It was really magical. And there was someone else that I had a connection to that I had seen the night before. And so it was just like walking into your space. It was like, oh, this is a little home, isn't
Yes.
it?
I'm glad that it feels inviting because I'm originally from Southern California, but I was living in Seattle for quite some time and I worked out of a dungeon there and I had my own little studio, my own little 2-room studio similar to mine now. So when I moved away from Seattle and came back to LA, I was like, I need this again. And I want something, very inviting. The girl that I left my lease to in Seattle turned it into more of a communal space rather than a private space. So when I came to LA, I was like, that's what I want. I want people to come into the space and use it for whatever you want. It could be as vanilla as you want to host your book club here. And it can be as kinky as like you want to host your next orgy and just whatever you want. Like there's clean sheets and lube. Just have fun.
That's it. Clean sheets and lube. Just have fun. Oh man, it's just a great sign. Like there's clean sheets and lube. Just have fun.
Yeah.
It's a good tagline. And it, I love that we have this idea about dungeons that they are dark and they're black and red and it's all leather and whips and chains. And I think that that's the idea around kink and BDSM as well. That's especially, working as an intimacy coordinator and thinking about media and how it's portrayed in media. And it's almost always bullshit.
Oh, it's so weird.
Always.
I can always like watch sex shows. Like I did an episode of Euphoria and thankfully they brought a local mistress, Mistress Justine, who runs Dungeon East, and it's an all-white dungeon. And they borrowed a lot of her, she got a white bed, a white spanking bench, a white cage. Everything in the space is white, similar to, the inspiration of my place where everything is pink.
Yeah.
And, we walked onto set and we were just laughing because there were certain things where we were like, you did not ask anyone about this who has ever worked in this industry, right? And they did hire her as a consultant, which was great because then she was able to say, like, I don't think you know what people in this livelihood actually do.
Yeah.
Because there was like so much random shit. You have never been to a dungeon, have
what
you?
Is that? Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of it is also what they think an audience wants to see. So part of it is what, writers in a room are like, this is what it is. And you're like, you don't know what you're talking
Yeah.
about. You have no experience here. And then there's also, the production designer, and everyone is trying to do the best job that they possibly can. But it just has to do with the fact that this is not a world that you actually know, and you can only do so much research. But I think to a degree, they're also catering to what the audience is going to know. But that's what needs to change, because if we want to erase stigma and we want to create authentic stories, which is something that I care so deeply about, is like, let's actually have the media portray something that's real and valid and that's actually happening in the world. Because people who are scared of it are going to get the wrong message. People who are interested are going to get the wrong message. Like, it's misinformation. And as we learn, especially on this podcast, people are getting their information from media, especially kids.
Oh, absolutely. And like, I have a lot of clients who will come to me and, say, I've been interested in this type of kink. I've been interested in this type of play, but the media in which I've, consumed makes it look so scary, look so dark, look so, vicious. And I'm like, it does not have to be that. Like, it can be very sensual. It can be very soft. It can be this, but because the media that they've consumed is only that, they've shied away from, practicing any of it or moving forward with a dominatrix, because they think it's just going to be like, sit the fuck down, slut, and like, sometimes it is.
Sometimes it is, if that's what you want. But it has to be the thing that you want. Like, that's the difference.
They think it is only that.
Yeah.
The lens through media is so narrow. And people who live this lifestyle and practice it, 24/7 have a wide breadth of experiences, but media only shows you this very linear view. And it's unfortunate, because then, like, that's the education they're getting. Like, ugh.
And there's so much. I mean, the reality with kink is that people are engaging in kink practices thinking that it's just normal. Like something like choking and asphyxiation, pulling hair, all of that is kink.
Yeah.
That's all kink.
And choking is the one that like makes me freak the fuck out. It's something that I actually do not practice in my work a lot of the times, unless somebody has come to the table and wants to be educated, because that is like one of the most common kinks that I see people practicing unsafely.
Oh, yeah.
And, they're just like, put your hand on my fucking windpipe. And I'm like, you cannot do that. Like,
that's not how it works.
That is not safe.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that people are like finding things that, open up the book of where they want to explore. But that is one of the ones where I'm like, almost everyone I've ever met who has not, let's say, visited a dominatrix is not doing it properly. And I'm like, you are going to kill someone.
Yeah.
Like, you're tying each other up and things go awry. You can cut yourself out of that, but you bust someone's windpipe.
Yeah. That's a problem. Like, there are techniques to these things. And as much as I think people on the outside world want to look at kink and they're like, it's so dangerous, it's so this, or it's so derogatory, or, whatever these stories are that we've been told for God knows how long. The reality is that it's all based in safety and consent and protocols. Absolutely. Like, protocols, people want to think they're boring, but like, they're actually really important, because that's what allows you to play in a big way. It's what allows you to be expansive. It's what allows you to live out any sort of fantasy in a way that's not going to be harmful to you or the person that's helping you engage in that fantasy.
Yeah.
Whatever that is.
The negotiations before a scene, which is like you guys playing together, it's like a business meeting. It's very dry, of just like, where would you like to start? What would you like to do next? What are your limits? Like, it's not sexy at all. But you do all of that communication first off, and then you know exactly what you're getting into. You agree to it, you start the scene, and then everything after that is like hot as fuck, because you know what to expect, you know what you're getting into, you've planned it all out, and then you can release yourself to it, instead of like, sometimes I feel with just straight regular sex where there's no negotiation beforehand, there is that like fear of like, where are we going? What's happening? Da 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 da.
What's going in there?
Yeah, right. And then like, that's where shit goes wrong.
Yeah.
And so it's like, the education aspect of it is so important, because I think, especially going to play parties, that's like kind of where all of this started for me. Is like, I wanted to have sex with women. I never had sex with women. I was like, I'm going to go to a swinger party and discover that. But going to a play party can be very scary for people, because they're like thinking that some dominatrix is just going to walk up to them and be like, sit the fuck down, I'm going to spank you. That would never happen.
Never. I work play parties, and that would absolutely, like, there are literally monitors that are around, safety monitors who are trained to make sure that everything is consensual, that things are happening in a way that's safe, that, you know, there are limitations depending on the play party that you're going to. Each party has different protocols, regulations, you know, everything, even with the same company, the same, you know, just company, they're going to look different every time.
Yeah.
Like where you can have sex, the types of sex you can have, the types of play you can do, like all of these things are going to look different with every single party. And that's, again, because it's so regulated in a way that allows people to feel safe to play. That's why intimacy coordinating is so important as well. Your actors can't come to the table in the most full and creative way if they have any sort of fears there, or what's happening, or, you know, like there's so much that our brains are doing when our bodies are engaging in something. And that's a big thing with kink as well, is like to kind of allow your brain to switch off a little bit, because you have that safety there.
Yeah, you've got safe, sane, consensual. That's the three, you know, moniker that everyone needs to be playing by. And so if one of those is missing, then your dungeon monitor is going to go, well, you can't play here today. Yeah. You know, and it can look a myriad of different ways, but safe, sane, consensual.
Yeah. And that's actually, it's also been developed. There are 4 of them, 4 different, the acronyms have developed over time. And I wish I had it in front of me right now, but they're like 4 different types that have evolved over time. And even the way that people use the acronyms kind of tell you where they sit within the kink world as well.
Yes, because
you know?
safe, sane, consensual has been around for a long time, but that means that, you know, you might have learned this in the 80s, which it still stands today. But like with Dan Savage, it became like GGG, like good.
And that's a different, I wasn't even thinking about that
good
one.
to go, you know, that means you probably learned about this in the 2010s, you know, or like how long have you been in the lifestyle? Where did you learn this from? You know, things like that. Yeah. Or did you just watch like an episode of Sex in the City and you were like, now I know? No, you did not.
Please don't do that. Don't do that. Please call people like Sam, a kinky consultant who can help you. And it's also, I think, just because we're talking about this, we have so much credit to give gay men, because they are the ones who really facilitated this. The leathers of the yesteryear in the 80s, I think it was, that the leather gangs, you know, groups, whatever, they started coming together, but they saw that there was a need for all of these boundaries and consent and protocols and all of these safety mechanisms. And I think it's also worth noting that lesbians may have been doing the same thing, but they get erased from history. Yeah. So we don't know the truth behind that, because
I know, it's so sad.
Lesbians do get erased.
Yeah,
but like, thank the queers, okay? Thank the queers.
We're going to give it an overarching umbrella of at least queers were here.
Yeah. I mean, listen, we have so much to thank the queer community for when it comes to consent and safety and being able to play full out. I mean, at the time of this recording, we're just coming into Pride. I think this is Happy Pride. But when this comes out, it's actually going to be post Pride. But we should be celebrating Pride all year long.
Absolutely.
Not just 1 month to be like, yay.
Well, here you go, gays.
Here's a treat.
That's all you get.
No, that's not cool. So, okay. So you said that you grew up in Southern California. Was it around LA, or where
I
did
grew
you
up in Palm Springs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I lived there till I was 18. Moved to LA straight out of high school. Lived here for a couple years and then moved to Seattle for 8 years. And when the pandemic hit, Seattle used to be a very beautiful artistic town. And, you know, a couple years back, corporate Amazon, Google, Microsoft, all that started to move in, which pushed the art outside of the city. And I'm somebody who loves to live in the center of a city, loves to take advantage of everything a city has to offer. And so it was just like, you know, if I'm paying all this money, it's pretty equitable to LA in how much it costs now.
Really?
You know, 8 years ago, you get a studio apartment for $500. Now you can live in a fucking Harry Potter studio apartment for $1,500.
Oh,
you know, like,
no, thank you.
So I was like, I'm not living an hour outside of the city for LA prices and no sunshine. Like, I'm sitting in Seattle. The world is shut down. It's gray and gloomy. And I said, I'm coming home. I need to be in LA. I'm a sunshine child. Like if I'm going to be doing nothing,
sunshine child,
for
I love
$3,000 a month, I'm doing nothing on the beach.
Yeah, exactly. Or like in a mountain or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that is one of the most beautiful things that I love about LA and about living in LA is that we get the city center, we get everything that a city can offer, but also we can fuck off. Like I go driving every weekend, all the time. I'm in the canyons all the time.
You're 2 hours away from everything, from snow, from mountains, from desert, from ocean, from Disneyland. Like it's so quick and easy versus like Seattle was so singular. And for the time that I lived there, it was really beautiful and really great, very kinky, very artistic. But when the world shut down, I was like, I'm coming home.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah. So Palm Springs, which is also a big gay community. Love that. How big was your school? Like
ginormous. Yeah.
Really?
My high school was 3,000 people. I saw someone every day that I had never seen before.
3,000 people. How many was in your graduating class?
So my freshman year, we started with 900 people. And unfortunately, only 400 of those people graduated. I will say that my public school education was very much lacking in support for people. So a smaller graduating class than intended, but 3,000 kids overall. And, you know, every day you'd see another stranger and go, I didn't know you went here. And I was like, I wouldn't say I was very popular, but I was just very known. I was in every theater production. I was a high achiever. Like I was the president of the Christian club, which is very embarrassing to me now. And people, I'd literally walk down the hallways and people would be like, what up, Christian girl? And like, I'd be like, I don't even know that guy. You know, like I was not popular in the sense of like likability, but I was popular in the sense of like being known. And every day I was like, who's that guy? I've been in this class with him all year. Who the fuck is that?
Yeah. I feel that because I was in theater. I did all the talent shows. Like I was a cheerleader. Like I was on a stage for the entirety of my high school experience. So that would happen to me. And my high school was not that big. Although I think my class was around, no, maybe the whole school was 400 people. I don't know. 400 is in my head. But anyway, but I had the same experience where people would just know me. And I'm like, I don't know you.
Oh man, like going to Walmart in my town would be so embarrassing. They're like, hey Sam, and I'm like,
hi.
Hey,
I mean,
girl,
that still
how's it
happens to
going?
me today all the time. I'm like, hi, hello.
My partner is very popular and knows everybody and very extroverted, has a million friends, and we go everywhere. And being attached to them, everyone's like, oh my God, Sam, it's so nice to see you. I've missed you. And I'm like,
who are you? They're so great. And I love that I know you separately.
That's funny because I go places and oftentimes people are like, I've never seen you alone. I always see you with your partner. We are one unit all the time because I'm very introverted. I don't like to go out and my partner will like drag me places, and once I'm out I'm having fun, but there's always that like 5 minutes before I leave the house I'm like
I don't want to go.
I don't want to go. Yeah, so it's interesting that you know us separately because most people only know us as a unit.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, when I met you in person, they were there, but
it was my event.
It was your event. And I was coming to you as someone who also works in sexuality and wanting to make that connection and like get into the community more and all of that. So, and then to walk in and see them, I was like, wow, this is such a delightful surprise. It was really great. It was so lovely. And I had just been with them the day before.
Dinner.
Yeah. So it was really nice. And I love knowing couples separately too. I think that so often we see people as one unit and it's a little bit difficult for people to see them as two individuals, especially if you have relationships with each one of them. But
absolutely.
Like, I think that's such a gift. So I feel lucky that I know you both separately and together. Yay. So in your high school, was that the first that you had any sex education, or were you getting it in the younger elementary schools? And was your elementary school grade that big, or was it like separate schools?
I couldn't remember. So we did elementary was K through 5, middle school was 6 through 8, and then high school was 9 through 12. And I don't really remember how large those were, but decently large.
Yeah.
And I do remember like in 5th grade them doing this like separate the boys from the girls, and you know you get a little gift bag with deodorant and tampons and pads and a little pamphlet, and I remember them vaguely explaining like what things were and stuff like that. And then in high school or middle school we had another like sex education week kind of thing, and just kind of the mechanics of like sperm meets with egg and stuff like that. And then into high school I did have to take a sex ed course like over summer school kind of thing.
Oh.
And again, like very mechanical and not really like interesting. Our teacher did try and like insert some of that, you know, because now people are dating each other, people are having sex, and the curiosity is coming out, versus when we were like children, we were just like, okay, can I go to recess now? You know, but it was very, at the time I found it sufficient. I was not having sex. I was religious. I, you know, expected to wait until marriage to do this. And I was only going to do it with one person. So I thought that a lot of this was not applicable to me anyway. So I thought it was sufficient. But now growing older, I look back and I'm like, there were a lot of things missing, guys.
Yeah, there's
like,
some gaps. There's some gaps here.
Lots and lots of gaps.
Babe really likes to make herself known when she's here and I'm recording, so I'm going to take that toy away from her. Stand by, everyone. Oh, babe. Oh, girl. Okay. This is very exciting content for the podcast. I just took an entire basket of toys away from that child. She's just going around bonkers now. So yeah, everybody does this whole separation of boys and girls. But you guys got goodie bags and a whole week.
Yeah.
What was it like that just made me think of in camp when you do like color wars for a week or something.
Well, it's interesting too, because like we're in 5th grade and they separate us by boys and girls and you get this little goodie bag, but then you go back to class and this is still a time where there's recess. So then like recess comes and we're hitting up the boys being like, well, what came in your goodie bag? You know, like, I got tampons. That makes sense. I know that at least. But what the fuck did you get? Like, they didn't get condoms or anything. You're in 5th grade, but like, I still can't remember. And the boys were very mysterious about what they got. And my mother, I will say, was very forward about sexual education and things like that. Because she, you know, was a pregnant teenager and things like that. So she was like, I'm going to tell you every horror story that I can, so that you're scared of like not doing drugs, not drinking, not having sex. And in a sense it worked, you know, because my mom and my dad met at a party in the 80s and like have all these drug stories, all these sex stories, all these crazy stories, pre-AIDS, you know, pre-fentanyl crisis.
Oh my
like
God.
My mom's like, you guys are so unlucky, because like I got to fuck when, you know, sex was easy. I got to do drugs when drugs were clean, and we don't have that anymore. And so she's like, kind of trying to scare us out of it, of like, you know, my mom was the mom in high school where if my friends wanted to have sex and their parents did not want to talk to them about it, like my mom would go buy them condoms. My mom took me to a sex store to buy a vibrator. Like my mom was like, please tell me about these things because I will help you through them.
Yeah.
Even if you want to do them, like if you want to go on birth control, if you want to do any of that, versus, you know, hiding it from your parents and now you're 16 and pregnant, you know, because that is a problem I don't want to have to handle. And I think being so open and talking about it, that actually took the allure away from it, that I was like, I don't know, it doesn't sound fun to me. Bye. You know, like it wasn't of interest to me. So I was actually like a good kid in that way. And Christianity came to me in high school. My parents were not religious. I got invited to like a youth group and I latched onto that because it was very communal. But then with that comes like abstinence and you're not having sex till marriage, which I was like, okay, that's fine. I think also because you know, deep down, I probably knew that I was gay. Yeah. And so all of this like sexual stuff, I was just like, I don't know, we'll figure it out one day, knowing now that it was probably because I didn't want to have sex with men. Yeah. You know,
you were like, I don't know, penis doesn't seem that much fun. So this is fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
And that's so interesting that you found religion later. And because usually for me, it was the opposite. I grew up in a religious home. So by the time I was in high school, I was already telling my mom like, hey, I'm out. I'm not doing this shit anymore. It's ridiculous.
Oh, my parents thought I was so weird.
Oh, I'm sure.
They were like, you want us to drive you to church, not to a party? Okay. Like I went on missions trips. Wow. I like was the leader of the Christian club. Like I was deep in, and my parents
that sounds
were like,
wild. I was the leader of the Christian club.
Like I'm fucking embarrassed by it now. Like that is white supremacy at its finest. Like I am so fucking embarrassed of myself. Like who at 16 years old should have the confidence to march into a foreign country and say, I know more than you and your thousands of years of cultural significance? Like, what? Yeah. And my parents were just like, sure, have a passport. Like,
yeah. I mean, what an experience though. And how, I mean, that juxtaposition of your mother being so open about sex and like taking you to go get a vibrator and teaching you and being that person for other people. And now you have decided yourself to be in purity culture. What was
Mhm.
that experience like?
Yeah, I mean, my mother thought it was very strange. Like, my mom was very much like, you should be having sex. Like, you should be having fun because eventually you'll be, married and in a relationship, and like all of that will be away from you. I don't think my mom has the awareness of like non-monogamy or anything
Yeah.
like that or kink. But when I said I didn't even want to kiss anyone until I was married, she was just like, you should
Wow.
literally be kissing everyone. Like, you don't buy a car without test driving it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So they thought I was very, I mean, my dad was, of course, elated, so happy.
Yeah.
Like, yes, he was raised in the Catholic Church. Like, he was probably so
Oh.
excited.
Mhm.
But my mom thought I was very strange. But hey, it meant that I wasn't going to get pregnant at 16. So,
Yeah.
like,
That's a relief.
sounds good to me, like,
Mhm.
and eventually I did step away from religion, and had a child and things like that. But even then, my mom was so proud of me that, like, by the age that I had my first daughter, my mom had had 3 kids.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
she was like, you beat me, that's all I
Yeah.
could ask for.
Yeah.
And, the same with my kid is like, I would love to be so open and honest and talk about these things so that they're demystified.
Mhm.
Because God forbid, she is a 16-year-old in high school and pregnant, because
Yeah.
I lacked in giving her that education,
Yeah.
and enough of me.
Yeah, no, it's so important. I mean, my sister was the same way with her kids, where she was always talking to them about everything because she's like, this is just the world that we live in. It's the reality. And, of course, she's always going to be age appropriate, but it did result in all 3 of her kids being like really smart about sex and really chill about it. Like,
Mhm.
they don't, not that they don't care, of course they care, but, they are all in their 20s now, but they're all responsible. They all, like, it was never this like, ooh, oh my God, especially her son. Like, because of course with like boys, it's like, oh, boobs, this and that.
Mhm.
And he was like, whatever, it's a fucking boob. Who
Yeah.
cares? And the rest of his friends were like, you know?
Yeah.
And so
Uh-huh.
it really does create a different experience, and it allows people to be more grounded because you're not giving this like, no, 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 you can't do it.
Yeah.
Because if you tell anybody, like a kid or adult, you can't do this, they're gonna be like,
I'm gonna do it.
what if I do?
Well, because yeah, I have a sister who's 5 years older than me, and she was the first child, and my mom was very strict with her across all boards.
Yeah.
Hanging out with your friends, going anywhere, cutting your hair, getting piercings, any of that. And by the time that I rolled around, my mom had realized that that was probably a mistake, because
Mhm.
now my sister wants to do exactly the opposite of anything my mother says. Versus my mom, when I came around to teenagehood, she was kind of like, do whatever the fuck you want, but do it safely.
Yeah.
And then it was demystified. I didn't care. I didn't want to do any of it. It wasn't
Yeah.
like fun to sneak out of the house and go to a party, because my mom was like, have fun,
Yeah,
like
she's like, I'll drive you. What are you
Yeah.
doing? That's what my sister was like too. She's like, call me 3:00 in the morning. If you're drunk, just call me. I'll come and pick you up.
My parents too. And there were very few times because I didn't do any of that stuff. But like I was like leaving the house and going to youth group for like 6 hours. I wasn't going to
Yeah.
a party, but in any instance where I did, my parents had that. You call us any time of the day
Yeah.
and we will pick you up, and we will not ask any questions, and you will not be in trouble. And a few times I did have to call, and predominantly it was my dad, because he's the late night person, who would pick me up. And I mean, no talking on the way home. You
Yeah.
could tell he was fucking pissed,
Yeah.
but at the same time didn't say a word.
Yeah.
And just took me home and said, that was
Love
that.
you and good night.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And that's
they
the way to do
held
it.
to their word. Yeah.
Good for them.
Mhm.
That's hard to do as a parent. So like, truly, I mean, I'm not a parent, but I can only imagine.
Oh, I'm
that it's,
terrified.
I'm
like, fucking terrified of the day where like I will do the same, and yet at the same time I'm going to be like, especially nowadays, like I didn't have a cell phone.
Mhm.
I didn't have a tracker on me. I didn't have
Oh,
an
yeah.
AirTag. Like, I wish I could put an AirTag on my kid. And
Yeah.
just be like, where are you?
Are you?
You know?
I mean, so many parents do that. It's like, okay.
Like they really were letting us just raw dog life.
Yeah.
Like I had a bicycle, and I would just ride my bike wherever the fuck I was. And as long as you were home by sundown, and even if you weren't,
all right, what are you going to do? Where are you going to find them?
they'll come home eventually. Like
that's just what it was.
Mhm.
And it's what it had to be. I mean, it's just technology. It is, to your point of your mom being like, oh, I wish you got to experience that. Like,
Mhm.
it does kind of really suck to be a kid today, because you do, I mean, there's the plus and the minus. The plus is that there are so many resources available to
Yeah.
kids that they can find people like you and I on the internet and learn good, solid, educating material. Like they can learn factual information. They
Mhm.
have access. On the flip side of that, we know so much more, which is actually a good thing because harm reduction, it prevents things, but we know so much more. They're helicoptered so much more. They're literally tracked by their parents, which is like good thing, bad thing.
Everyone has a supercomputer in their pocket with a camera on it. Like,
yeah,
I'm glad that like some dumb shit I did in high school is not on tape anymore. You
For
know,
real.
like I feel bad that like you could go to a party and everyone's got a camera, and the next day you've gone viral for like puking your brains out inside of the jungle juice. Like,
yeah, social media didn't become a thing until after college, really, for me. Like, I was on the way out when Facebook, I think, we had MySpace, but like the way that we have social media today, like I was out. I was already in my 20s, and like, we would share like drunk stuff in our 20s, but like it's so different than being a teenager and the whole bully culture, and like, oh my God, there's so much. So I do feel real bad for the kids today.
I know, I feel old saying that.
I know.
You poor children.
But you know what? I go to like pole dance. I'm like, I can actually be your moms. Like, there's like a lot of people in this room that I'm old enough to be your mother. So that's fine. I don't look it.
I know I had my daughter very early, and I'm like kind of excited for when she's like in high school, and I hope that I will be relatable to these children. Like, I will not be the older mother who's like too far removed from these things, like, and they don't want to talk about sex, and they don't want to, because my mom was also very young, and I think that's why it was useful that like you didn't want to talk to your 45-year-old mother, you wanted to talk to my 30-year-old mother, you know, because she was still cool. She was the cool mom, and so it was easier to tell her like, you know, I want to have sex with my boyfriend and I don't know what that means, and she's like, okay, let's break it down.
Yeah. God bless her. Science bless her. Whatever. Universe bless her. And so for you, so high school, you're getting education, real methodical, mechanical, all of that stuff. So like boring, not really a value, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And you're in this religious world. And how did you break out of that? What did that look like for you?
Yeah. So, you know, my church was, of course, full of rules like any Christian church, but also had some interesting, like, flexible ideas. Like, for instance, like they were aware that gay people existed, and they weren't like, you know, gay people are going to burn in hell. It's the worst sin in the world. They viewed it as sin is equal across the board. You know, some people are tempted to steal and some people are tempted to be gay, and you turn down temptation because that's what God wants. So things like, you know, I started to feel like I might be gay, but you would still choose a husband because that's what God wanted. And so like I remember I was absolutely horrified thinking back at this, but like there was a girl in my high school, she was the pastor's kid, she was kind of more masculine, she was dating this guy who's much more feminine, and I was talking to my youth pastor being like, we should tell her that he's gay, like, is that not an issue? And she was like, you know, the girl is very masculine, the boy is very feminine. That would actually be honoring to God in a way, so that they could get what they want out of a relationship, but still be honoring God. You know, instead of her dating a woman, she could date a feminine man, kind of a thing. And those things at the time made sense to me, you know, or sex, like don't have sex before your marriage. But once you have sex, have as much fucking sex as you want. Like sex is talked about in the Christian church so often after marriage. Like youth pastors would get up there having been married at 18 years old after dating someone for 6 months. Like we would joke 6 months to marriage. You would meet someone and 6 months later you would be married, like practically half the time, because people wanted to have sex is what they wanted to do. And so they would just get married so they could have sex. And then your youth pastor would get up there and be like, hey, Sunday morning church, look at my hot wife. Isn't she banging? Isn't she this? And I was like, wow,
that's weird.
Like people would be talking about sex all the time, but in the confines of marriage. And so it was just like, you know, we'd get married one day and we'd do that. So there were flexibilities in that things that I knew I wanted out of life, I could still have, but under these constraints. Right. But other things were very strict, you know? And so I moved, I had a very tumultuous relationship with my family. I moved out at 17. At 18, I moved to LA, and I was living with 3 girls in an apartment, 2 in each room, and everyone was religious. So I thought that this was going to be great. But I was dating a boy at the time who was not religious, and they took very harshly to that. They did not like it. I was unequally yoking myself,
Ooh.
which is very much a church term. And so they said, you need to break up with your boyfriend. I was also a vegetarian, which I'm not anymore, but they took harshly to that for whatever reason. And they would leave like Post-it notes on the fridge and say that like God didn't love me. And like they would leave Bible verses, like very cherry picking Bible verses of like one specific line that has to do with like whatever I was going through at the time and why I was going to hell. When you read like the entire book, and that's not even what that line was intended to mean and shit. And I was somebody who was like, I had read the Bible.
Yeah.
I did not just like listen in on Sunday and that was it. I had read from front to back the Bible. I was going on missions trips. I was going to go to seminary school. Like I was deeply invested. So when these girls were kind of cherry picking what worked and didn't work for them, I was like, I don't understand why you guys think you're going to heaven and you get to treat people this way. And I am stopping myself from having experiences because I think it honors God in fear of not going to heaven, but you guys get to do whatever the fuck you want. And I had this fear that's ingrained into you from church that anything you did wrong, God was going to come down and just directly punch you in the fucking face. You know, like I was going to get hit by a car tomorrow if I had sex with my boyfriend. But these girls were being absolutely atrocious to me. And I was like, I don't think that this is compatible for me. And of course I had this boyfriend who was atheist, not even just like,
oh, wow.
He was atheist. And, we would talk about it all the time. Of course, I was trying to convert him and he was trying to convert me. And so I was going through this, tumultuous relationship with these girls that I was roommates with. And he was helping me through it, being like, Sam, I don't think you've given this a wide enough look. And, God is not going to kill you for having things that you want to have, especially if we're consenting adults, especially if, this is something that is enjoyable to you, not even specifically the sex, but literally just like anything in my life that I felt I could not have because of religion. And so that kind of opened my eyes and I started kind of peeling away from it. And of course we started having sex and, he was absolutely wonderful. I do not have a negative thing to say about this man. I wish him the fucking world. He was beautiful and perfect and kind. And it was wonderful to be in a relationship like that, that was so pure and so perfectly kind that entering into sex felt right. It wasn't dirty. It wasn't scary. It was lovely, And so, for many reasons we didn't work out, but, then after that, I was like, well, shit, God didn't come down and punch me in the fucking face. Let's see what else I can do.
This is fun.
And then I just went on like a horror spree. I was like, well, now that I've had sex for the first time ever and I didn't go to hell instantly, I've already broken the seal. Let's just start having sex all the time. And so I had sex with a bunch of people, and then I got into another relationship and we were together for a while. And then the gay stuff started to come out and I kind of pitched like polyamory, like, what if we got a girlfriend and we could share her? And like, that's very toxic when it comes to monogamy. But at the time, this made sense to me. And then after that big relationship, I was like, I'm gay.
I do not want the peen.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
The only time I have sex with men now is for money. So
yeah, exactly. If I'm going to do this, you will be paying me. And so obviously your education in high school would have not covered anything in kink or how to navigate being gay or opening up a relationship or anything like that. So was there anything that you felt actually prepared you for those things, or were you like so many of us where you're just trying some shit out and failing and succeeding in some?
Yeah, I was just freeballing it. I was just throwing shit to the wall and see what stuck. I when I wanted to start dating women, I went on Tinder and I found this girl, and very classic Tinder thing where then she mentions, I have a boyfriend. And I was like, hey, fuck it. I've never dated a woman before. So throw a dude in there. We'll see how that works.
Maybe this is what it's like.
And they had been non-monogamous for several years. So they had read all the like non-monogamy books and they were like, hey, even if this doesn't work out between us, this is our first date. Of course, I'm not putting much pressure on this, but like, here's some resources that maybe you might like. And so I ate up everything. Like when I'm interested in something, it's my like ADHD brain that like, I will read everything about it, every online article, every Instagram, every book. And so I just ate that shit up. And I really liked that girl and it didn't work out. And so after that, I didn't really want to get into another relationship, but I did want to have sex with women. And I was afraid, like, what if we go on a date and I like you and I'm not good at it, right?
Yeah.
Like, and then I'm attached to you, but I don't know how to have sex with you. And that's super awkward. So where can I have sex with people that is very low stakes.
Mhm.
And I decided upon going to a swingers club because predominantly most of these people are married.
Yeah.
So like, you're not going to leave your husband for me, who's never had sex with women before. And you probably have never had sex with, you know, many pussies in your life because
Yeah.
you're married to a man. So I started going to the swingers club, and that became the opening of like non-monogamy and also kink. And like, these are people who've been doing it for years. Oftentimes these are people who have educated themselves, and then people are just sharing resources. It's just communal resource sharing. Oh, you should read this book. Oh, you should listen to this podcast. Oh, you should come. There was classes at this swingers club. You know, you should come to this class. And people just started sharing things with me. Like, you know, even if we're not going to fuck each other, I can still tell you about this amazing podcast. And I just started eating up resources, you know, and learning things and moving forward. And then, you know, several years later, now you become the person who is able to share resources and stuff. And I want to be that person to younger people to be like, hey, just real quick, before you start free balling life, you could read this article, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's so important. And I think that is one thing that I love within the sex forward community and the sex positive community. And obviously like professionals who are doing this work is that there is such a sense of community and sharing and wanting to take care of each other. And people that are outside of the community, they tend not to be that way.
Absolutely. And it's very frightening to me that like, I think about this when I got pregnant, and you know, sex education also pours into pregnancy education, pregnancy loss, abortion, all of that. And it's something that, because it is very intimate, I think people don't want to talk about it or share their own experiences. They kind of like, it's like you're waiting for someone else to say something first, and then you can all start pouring out, right? And so it was like, nobody really talked about what pregnancy was like until I was pregnant. And now everyone wanted to tell me their pregnancy story. Everyone wanted to tell me their birth story. Everyone wanted to tell me this, that, and the other. And I was like, you guys couldn't have mentioned any of this before. You can't take it back now. Like, I'm like 8 months pregnant. Somebody's telling me what an episiotomy is, like where they split you from vagina to asshole. Like, and I was like, if I had known about that, maybe I would not have gotten pregnant at all. Like, you know, like the education is so lacking until you're already there. And at that point you can't take it back. Like, you know, I just get so scared about the fact that we're not talking about these things, because people get into situations where you're too deep and now you've made a decision that you can't take back, you know? And all of a sudden, once you find out that somebody's into something, you're so free and open to talking. Why aren't we talking to the people who are just even a little bit inquisitive? So then they can make educated decisions. I think that a lot of us are freeballing it, and none of us are making educated decisions. Just
100%.
learn about choice A and choice B, even if there is choice, you know, C through G. But even if I could just give you two choices and you could decide which one fits you better, or which one you lean towards, then we can talk more about that. But people are really only aware of like choice A. And that is going to lead you down choice A's path, you know. But what if another path had been better for you? And I wish we would all be more open, kind of like what you're saying in the beginning. When I'm hanging out with people, I'm always trying to start talking about sex, because I want to see what, you know, what sticks. I'm like, who's got something to say today?
And you know, pregnancy, miscarriage, abortions, they are so isolating.
Absolutely.
They're so isolating. Even when you have your support system, it's just an isolating experience. And we are taught, especially with pregnancy, like the whole don't talk about it for the first trimester. That's because no one wants to be uncomfortable when it is a miscarriage. And because we don't do that, we don't talk about how common miscarriages are. It's a perfectly normal part of pregnancy. Unfortunately, it fucking sucks. But pregnancy is hard. Being pregnant is dangerous. Having a baby is fucking dangerous. We don't talk about those things because patriarchy, misogyny, and they wanted it to be an isolated experience. But the reality is, this shit is hard. Abortion is fucking hard. Even when you want it, it's hard. I've had two. It fucking sucks. I wanted both of them. Didn't want to be in that situation, but I was. And the first time around, didn't talk about it. I was totally isolated, held it in, had terrible experiences. The shit cut up. The second time, I fucking told everyone. And the more I talk about it, the more people are like, yeah, I had one too. I had two. I had this many. I had that.
Oh, I think it's wonderful when people talk about it. I was dating a guy one time, and he was much older than me, and he had said, you know, when he and his first wife had gotten together very early on into their relationship, she got pregnant and they decided she would have an abortion because they wanted to continue college. They wanted to set themselves up. And now, they're rich as fuck. They're college educated. They have 3 beautiful children.
Yeah.
And when the Roe versus Wade overturning happened, she said to him, I think I want to talk about it because we would not be the people we were today had it not been for that decision 15 years ago, And of course, that's not my decision to make, but dating him, I was like, please, I hope she talks about it because that's what we need to hear. We need to hear my life is fucking amazing because I did that, because there's a lot of shame coming into it. And like in my practice of even just kink, my number one goal is always to create a space free of shame. Like you could literally come to me and be like, tell me your dirtiest fucking fantasy that like if you told anyone else this at a bar, they'd be like, fucking pervert. And I'd be like, let's explore that.
Yeah.
Let's see, under some ramifications,
of course,
but like, oh, you want to suck toes?
Okay.
Let's talk about it. Okay. Like meeting somebody in the place that they're at free of shame is how we need to be having these conversations. And the judgment that happens it's like, I saw something when I had my daughter, like you could be the mom that lets your kid watch TV, or you could be the mom that never lets your child see television. You could be the mom that lets your kid eat candy. You could be the mom that eats only organic. No matter what it is, somebody will always disagree with you. So you need to just make your choices and be fine with them, because no matter, you could have the abortion, you could not have the abortion. You could have, the orgy, you could not have the orgy. Somebody will always disagree with you. So let's just fucking start talking about it, because then you can find at least the people who do agree with you, and you can learn, you can educate, you can plan your next orgy.
Yeah. And the reality is we have so many shared experiences, whether it is the same kink or have an abortion or having a miscarriage or whatever it is. We have so many shared experiences that we need to be creating space for us to just share those experiences. That's why community is so important. And, there's so much judgment, and that comes from a place of insecurity from that person and that person judging because they're afraid of what the reflection on them would be, or they don't feel that they are allowed to have that life or whatever. I mean, there's a million reasons why people come from a judgmental place, but it's never a place of being grounded, and it's never a place of being authentic and true to yourself. So the more we can create those safe spaces, which you're doing such a huge service by doing that, the more us as humans, like we can all just move in a better direction. Imagine if we were all moving through the world without shame and with consideration of other people and their consent and their boundaries. Like, fuck, war would end. Let me tell you, war would end.
That's like why not why I got into sex work, but why I continued on with it. I got into it because I was playwriting at the time and I thought it would be funny. And then I got there and I was like, this is dope. Like, I'm going to keep doing this. But especially, I had been a sugar baby and I had been in money, related relationships before. But when I started stripping, what really got to me was like, I of course understood that like dancing and giving lap dances and being sexy was a thing. But I had never considered that the majority of the time that you go to the VIP, you're not doing anything sexy. Like my bread and butter is a 45-year-old white man or older who has some shame to unpack. And it's, my wife and I aren't compatible sexually, or I have this fantasy that nobody wants to talk about, or I am a high profile businessman who's always supposed to be strong and I just need to be soft for a second. Like the amount of time somebody would take me to the VIP and would cry or just need to unload because I'm a stranger. It's like you see this in retail all the time where like, you're the grocery store clerk and the person buying the groceries says something like wildly inappropriate, but it's like they needed to say it out loud and to a stranger that's not going to have any stock in what's actually happening. And so as a sex worker, that became my clientele of people who, needed to say it and was not going to come into you're not paying me for a service. You're paying me for privacy is what I say.
Yeah.
So you're paying me to keep this secret for you. I am the secret keeper. I'm an underpaid therapist in a sense or overpaid depending on the day.
Yeah.
But it's like people want to come to you and unload their shame and explore things. And, sometimes it's just for an hour, maybe you don't want to blow up your entire marriage over the fact that you like to wear lacy thongs.
Yeah.
but for an hour a week, you can go to me and I can tell you how pretty you look, and you got satisfied from that. And now you go home and you live your daily life, you know, separate of that.
And I think it's also a really good indication of where men unfortunately sit in this society, where they are not free to wear the things they want to wear. They're not free to be soft. They're not free to feel. They're not free to have these conversations with partners and friends, or even in a place where they feel like they can go to therapy. It's really fucking hard.
The talking about it is the first step, let alone the acting upon it. These, you know, people who feel any side of shame, the talking about it is so frightening to them because of the shame and because of the judgment, because of the, you know, internalized guilt, that acting upon it seems impossible.
No, not even a part of it. Like, it's not even possible.
They can't even get past the talking about it, bringing it up. Like, you know, imagine being in your friend group and being like, hey, by the way, I like to do this. And every single one of your friends being like, what the fuck,
bro?
Like,
that's disgusting.
Yeah.
What are you, fucking gay?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's like,
so what if I am? Who fucking cares?
You know, and any sort of femininity or anything opposition to masculinity certainly affects men, but then like we feel it in queer culture, you know, because heterosexual culture is very much the predominant value. And so you know, lesbians feeling shamed about this or that because that's not in media, you know, that's not being fed to us. We don't even know what option A is, let alone B, C, and D. And like we just need to start having these conversations. Like, I did not know how to have sex with a vagina. I have one, and I don't even know how to have sex with a vagina. I was like, I don't know, you know. And it's like, I wish I could have just talked to a lesbian and been like, what do I do? You know?
And thankfully there are a ton of resources, and you know, like that is one of the classes I'm going to be building. But like
the little vagina pillow you have, like
my vulva puppet.
If I had been able to look at that
I'm
and
gonna
been like,
get it.
and be like hood to clit, like, wow, that would have been so. Because one of the first times I had sex with a woman at the swingers club, she was married, and her husband, we were just talking, the three of us, and you know, and then he just turns to me after, you know, a lull in conversation and goes, do you want to fuck my wife? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, I can help you. And I was like, well, I don't want to be touched by you. I don't want to have sex with you. And he goes, no, I'll sit over here and you guys can have your fun. And if you need some guidance, I'll help you. And
what a gift.
Oh my God. It was like playing a video game. It was awesome. He's like, you know, like, he's like, put your hand here, put your legs here, put your tongue here, put your fingers here. It was like, he was giving me the up, up, down, down, left, right, A, B. You know, he knew the cheat codes because this is his wife.
Yeah.
You know, like,
I
he's
love
like,
that.
you know, touch her clit like this and I was like, and like, he's like, are you ready? And I'm like, ready for what? And he's like, do this one thing. I was like, okay. And then it was just like, he counted down 3, 2, 1, and she fucking squirted all over me.
Wow.
I didn't even know that was a thing. I was like, what's happening?
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, I love
like,
that so
I
much.
I just love this. Like, I just want to sleep.
Yeah. I love my velvet
It's like
puppet.
a little rose.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, that's actually.
Oh yeah, that's. No, just kidding. I know anatomy now. I didn't lift the hood far enough.
I have a video that I'm going to film with that's taking us all through, that will probably be out before.
Did you make this?
No, I bought it from someone.
Oh my God.
If you look up the vulva puppet, I think that's how you find her Instagram.
Love it. I'm buying one.
Yeah, you should. And you can actually choose whatever colors and everything that you want. I love red. So I was like, oh yeah, the red works for me. So this is one of like the standard ones that she makes, but you can make it with any color fabric, any combinations, anything. Like, it's amazing. The vulva puppet. She's great. I'm going to link it in the show notes to this podcast. Normally, this is where I would give people a pop quiz, but you are someone who works in sexuality. So I would love to know, is there a fun fact, some sexy fact that you want to share or that you wish people knew more? I know I'm putting you on the spot. I did not give you a warning. So that's the pop quiz part of this. But is there anything that you would like people to know?
I would say my number one resource that I give people that I did not create myself is bdsmtest.org. If you're somebody who is interested in exploring kink, And I also, at my website, thekinkyconsultant.com, I have a more elaborate version of this, but the BDSMtest.org test is really wonderful. Basically, it goes through and it asks you a bunch of questions about things that might interest you, and then it rates you on a scale of like 0% to 100%. And when I'm taking on a new client, I make them take this test, and like, of course, anything 70% or up, you could probably already voice that you were into that. Like, I'm into feet. Of course, you got 99% on that. We knew that.
Yeah.
Or I am absolutely not into rope. Of course, you got 2%. We already knew that. But the interesting ones to me is the like 30 to 60 or 40 to 60, because those are things that maybe you didn't know about, or you, have never heard of, but through this course or this questionnaire, it's guided you to those. And I'm always like, look at those and see, you might have just in this moment found out that you might be into like daddy dom play, and you've never even heard of that. Go Google that, go find it. And on my website, I have a more detailed list of like, okay, we all know about spanking, but let's talk about, do you want to be spanked with an open hand or a closed hand, or with a wood paddle or a leather paddle? Like, let's really delineate what you're into. And are you like a 10 about that? You're like, fuck yeah. Or are you like a 4, like, if you ask me to do it, I might be into it, like really exploring what you could be open to, because you only know what you know.
Yeah.
And so finding these resources and finding this education is so important, because you might find something. Like, I teach ropes courses. Of course, like, you can see my little harness that I'm wearing now, but like, I teach ropes courses, and the people that I typically teach to are people who have never tied before. And for some people, it's the same as like taking a pottery class on a Sunday. They're just trying to learn a new skill to like have fun. And for some people, they, I can see them in the class, eyes widening, smile growing,
Yes.
and they're like, I have found it. I have found what I love. And there's something for everyone. Some people have 20 fucking kinks like me, and some people have that one special one that they're like, ooh, baby, I'm into it. So open yourself up to exploring that. Open yourself up to finding something new, because you only know what you know.
Yes, I love that. Where can people find you?
So you can find me on Instagram at the Kinky Consultant. You can find my website, thekinkyconsultant.com. I teach ropes courses. I have resources on my website for people, printables, things like that. I'm also available for one-on-one consulting. It's very popular for me to go to people's houses and, make the magic start to happen, and then just like float away,
Ooh,
like,
I love that.
The world is your oyster. I've gone to stores with people, like sex stores, and taught them about what toys are, and I'm aiming to be that kinky friend. When you don't know who to ask that question, send me a DM on Instagram. Like, I would love to tell you the best vibrator in the world. I would love to tell you where to find your next sex party. I would love to tell you how to do that one thing that you've always been interested in. Like, and I just want to like bring the world a little bit of spice.
Yeah,
we don't all have to be dominatrixes, but we all should be having good sex.
100,000%. And there are so many ways that we can do that. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Absolutely.
This was such a fun conversation. I'm so happy that you came on, and I'm so happy that we're becoming friends, and I get to learn so much more about you and all of the amazing things that you do.
Thank you so much.
If you enjoyed this podcast, then go ahead and like, subscribe, give a 5-star review. If you have a question to ask one of our other guests, not our sexuality workers, because they're going to tell us stuff. But if you have a question, you can put it in the review. If you think someone would be interested in getting some kinky consultations, please do send them this episode so they can meet Sam. But thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening. That's all I got. Bye-bye.
So cute.
Yeah.